Sorry guys, just a sec. Okay. The title for tonight's episode is A Nameless Love That Changed the World. And so, we find ourselves entertained by the story of the world. We administer the story of the world through names. We administer the world through names, the story of the world through names, through symbols. We're a creature that, just like our ancestry, the caveman, is hitting two, like the caveman hit two objects together and discovered fire. We are in a sense hitting subjects together to try to discover a sort of higher phenomena. For me, the story of life is a series of expectations, a series of aims, and in some sense how the results of these expectations in some sense end up. In some sense, every moment we are like a sword and shield wielding our stories of life to confront the moment. Fundamentally, we are creatures that base the story of the world on a primary separation of our intelligence with the world. As if there was a moment where there was no sort of self-awareness, it was just forms, phenomena, just creatures. Suddenly this creature was able to acknowledge its mortality. It was able to acknowledge its individual existence. It was able to create a story for itself that only it could see. And now we have lived so many decades, so many generations of human beings have kind of entered the world and in some sense left. That it's as if we are all part of this grand movement of existence, and we appear in this lifetime as a sort of brush of the universe in its unique design. For me, I noticed that when I was younger, my attention was just on external reality. I did not even care about the idea of myself. I just wanted things and I went after. But then it came a point where I switched to the other side and I started diving into my inner reality. In some sense, I became more fascinated with the subjects laid upon the world rather than the objects interpreted. For me, I found an opportunity to wonder about myself beyond any idea I had. And that's when I met the unknown for the first time. And when you meet the unknown, it's not that you're meeting personalities. It's not like you're having a relationship with a sort of invisible other. For me, it's that the invisible other is not invisible to itself. You see? As if our mind is our alpha. Like, imagine your thoughts, just the whole thought. Imagine the thought of someone running was just like a letter in your mind. And so the sequencing of how thoughts arise in your awareness, they arrive in patterns, right? And these patterns are first ascribed to your world, so you feel that what you see is only what you see, but then you begin to see the commonality. And you begin to see how chaos and order do not just respond to subjective existence or just objective existence, rather they arise in an attention. And so I want to read a quote actually. Let me see where I found the quote. The quote is from a man named Shams Tabrizi. For all those people around the world who know who Rumi is, Maulana Rumi, Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi, this guy's an ancient poet from like 700 years ago that wrote a lot of sacred hymns about the divine and whatnot, you know? And so he had a teacher. So I'm reading a quote from this dude's, like, the guy who that man looked up to. And in some sense, he has this quote where he says, "A life without love is a waste." And then it's kind of in like a quotation where he says, "Should I look for spiritual love or material love or physical love?" Question mark. As if the dude's first saying a life is without love is a waste, but what kind of love should I seek? Should I seek the love of God, the sort of religious discipline towards heaven? Or should I have material love where I just infuse in my desires and give them total freedom to be what they are? Or in some sense, so I don't know, he says, should I look for spiritual love or material or physical love? And I believe one of them is in some sense a sort of, he's referring to a sort of relationship love, and the other is just a love of the beauty of the world. Like he's saying, where should my attention go in some sense? Anyways, I'll read the full quote. He says, "A life without love is a waste. Should I look for spiritual love or material or physical love? Don't ask yourself this question. Discrimination leads to discrimination. Love doesn't need any name, category, or definition. Love is a world itself. Either you are in at the center, either you are out yarning." So this Shams Tabrizi's idea of love is very different than that popcorn, box cover love. So I'm saying to you that it's as if for this being, he's saying, if you don't become aware, okay, let me say it like this. He says, a life without love is a waste. So what does love bring? Love brings a sort of harmonious meaning, a harmonious purpose in the moment. So in some sense, without discriminating, without trying to shape love, we are trying to recognize how it is already a reality, as if it was the love of your ancestry that has kept you here now. It was a sort of hope for the future, for a certain genetical pattern to be seen in the future. And civilization's success is based. A civilization's success is honestly based on how able the individuals see themselves. For me, life is a comedy and a tragedy. Sometimes the spirit of chaos moves more than the spirit of order, and sometimes the spirit of order moves than the spirit of chaos. I have moments where I'm right now speaking in a, I'm speaking through some sort of media platform where I feel like that I'm on my own stage, but there have been moments where I felt like I've just been a passenger in the moment. I don't believe the concept of how they say there is beta wolves and alpha wolves. For me, it is impossible to be in one state all the time, but it is possible to be in one view of the world. And so I find that the way you see the world is the way actually you see yourself, the idea of self. So one can say if love is a world it's in itself, if there's a sort of reality where beyond dualistic inclination there is just, it's as if a sort of, just like how we see a child is happy, we see that that child grown up can still be as happy as that moment. Even though the responsibility and the crystallization of the story of the world has occurred. A nameless love that changed the world. Let me say something very interesting. In yogic practice, there's something called Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of devotion. And in the yoga of devotion, it's as if the one way towards an enlightened state of being and towards God was to, in some sense, not fall in love with stuff in your world, but to fall in love with the world. To, in some sense, see the authority of the unknown as a sort of something that it brings devotion. That means there are people who, in some sense, they walk the path of love in existence. In pure devotion, you are sacrificing, or not sacrificing, you are surrendering your idea of self for the ultimate vision. So in some sense, your trust is right now based on your conscious mind, which means you are considering who you are by certain ideas, by certain viewpoints. You're right now a collection of ideas which at their roots are images that you have accepted the world to be. And I'm saying that once you step out of your mind, you live in a world where the moment is justified and designed based on your experience, the living experiencer, rather than the conceptualized objects or subjects of experience. Do you see? For me, it's as if the mind is what made the world alive. Our evolution is rather than just us thinking that it's as if we went to a new state. It's as if we were in one room, now suddenly we're in two rooms at the same time, you know, as if we were first it's a sort of onion style multidimensionality. You know, where there's concentric dimensions in some sense. And anyways, pretty much the idea right now I feel I should communicate is an idea that's, how would I say it? As if you reach a point in this life where you have to let go of your subjectivity to experience your objective life in a new way. And those are the moments where you suddenly require faith. And that faith is not a religious faith where believe in the ride before you know, buy the ticket. You know, it's not one of those things. It's a sort of it's a sort of self-ideological sacrifice to a sort of experiential presence. And you reach, suddenly you pass the language threshold and you reach the unspeakable state. And when you reach the unspeakable state, you are no longer an individually conscious creature. You are, in some sense, a collectively conscious world. Are the efforts of life in the unknown in vain? Are we the past constantly recycled into the future? Are we an eternal present moment experiencing through language a sort of eternal simulation of a world? As if our ideas can live longer than us if people read our books. You know? So for me, it's as if like it was before survival of the fittest, now it's survival of the fittest idea. Survival of like we all are in one painting, as if we are colors and different colors in a grand painting, and imagine these colors are at war, you know, in this painting. Yet they don't realize they're being drawn in every moment. Life is shifting and changing in design. And so what really has the value is that we, let's say we are not sure that we are a physical being. Okay, let's say we're right now in an unknown moment and there's certain aspects of knowledge present. Okay, but let's say primarily we are an unknown moment. Let's just entertain that idea. So an unknown moment cannot be certain. So when you cannot be certain, you have to use a different tool because your logic is based on how far you see and how far you can translate your sight into linear structures of uh, uh, linear forms that you can even judge. So for me, right now, like you hearing me talking, what's occurring is that it's as if I'm a moment that just acknowledges a certain bubble of knowledge, like I'm in my own sphere, and then there's everything outside of this. And when I wonder about my own sphere, and I wonder about what's beyond the sphere of my awareness, I find myself in a moment where no longer I am just lost to the past. As if most people, you ask them who they are, it's as if what is answering is the past. It is a sort of pre-designed response system. You know, just like how I've walked in certain moments of insight where it's been graceful, I feel like I saw the universe in a clearer way. You know, and there's also been moments where I've seen the universe in a chaotic way. And in one of those chaotic ways, it was in some sense the it was a story. It was a story of chaos. Swami Vivekananda has this quote where he says, "Those truly live who live for others." That means after the individual, after the person, the child that has opened its eyes in this existence, after that child has lived for itself only, it will eventually realize the idea of itself is codependent with the idea of anything that it's considering other than itself. And so when you suddenly reach that point, you realize you're a sort of universal responsibility to the sector of your existence, or at least how your moment is performs. For me, my mind's failure is not worse than my heart's failure. And what I mean by that is that sometimes I have had to sacrifice, like literally take my attention away from, how can I tell you, an expectation that I felt would happen, just to respect the changing moment's quality. As if, believe it or not, I could be sitting here talking to you, but my moment, even before anything changes in this moment, I would just get a feeling as if something in the moment is different than how the current conscious personality was designed. As if you're just this, the Yoga Patanjali Sutra suggested you're like a glass orb. Your consciousness is a glass orb. And whatever this glass orb goes over, whatever surface, it takes that shape. It takes that color. Do you see? So as if any environment you find yourself in, in some sense, your response to the environment is a sort of design of your personality in the moment. That's why social cruelty, if you see someone in society being rude or cruel, in some sense, you cannot blame them because there's a sort of hollowness to the whole structure of the value. So, what I mean by that is that when we say a child didn't know better, we blame the child less. When we see the human species didn't know better, we blame the collective consequences less. Do you see? As if as if in our individual consciousness we are driving this collective vehicle that is our civilization. And it's primarily focused on vision, and vision looks at an image, and that image in some sense is your energy. So many people think the energy of the moment is just based on like their physical exercise. It is definitely, but your health is also based on how you see the design of the idea of yourself. That means, how do you see this world behind your eyes? And when I say the world behind your eyes, this is just a subtle awareness that, for example, like when I look at something, or like if you saw me, the way I see myself is not the way you see me. There will always be that contrast. Because even though we're all in one world, we are in our own world in this one world. And this is why communication is valuable. It is as if a spaceship from one world, one inner reality, through externality is entering another inner reality. And for me, I thought, what if our evolution is not physical? As if we evolved, okay? Let's say we look at biology and we're saying we're made of matter and we're made of atoms, and these atoms have led to complex biology, and this biology over time has been shaped and sculpted by the hands of time into our current evolutionary state. Now, when we wonder where is this creature going to evolve to next, now this is the unique idea that's probably pretty uncommon, is that what if it is not linguistic or conceptual, the next evolutionary phase of civilization? What if it's as if rather than the body thinking it's a thought, it comes into a mode where it is a consciousness owning the matter rather than matter owning the consciousness. So what does that mean? It's as if, imagine like a friend of yours standing beside you now. Imagine if that friend, in that moment, like there was that presence and everything, but it was just the friend's mind, and the friend's body was not visible for a moment. You would see as if there is a presence there. It's still in the conceptual realm. These are in a sort of theoretical forest I'm speaking about. What I'm saying, I'm theorizing, I guess, at this point. But what I'm saying is that the presence of mind is unconditional in the personalities that we embody. Believe it or not, it all goes down to a relationship. If they tell me what the idea of the person is, I say it is the first duality, the first separation. And yet at the same time, every day appears as a new day because we change. So believe it or not, even though we as creatures were like, yes, we discovered language, and in some sense we have developed sophisticated sciences and knowledge, yet at the same time we see it's as if, how do I say it, as if you were given the birthday cake but not the candle. It'll feel as there will be a sort of incomplete perfection, as if some level of perfection is being experienced by civilization's technological efficiency, but it's as if as long as you exist in a duality, you are between two worlds. Leonardo da Vinci has this quote. He says, to develop a complete mind, learn to see. Realize how everything Oh, sorry. I'll tell you the full quote again. The full quote is to develop a complete mind, study the art of science, study the science of art, learn to see, realize everything connects to everything else. That means he's saying study both sides of the fundamental duality that is the axis of your subjective universe. When you study this duality, then learn to see. That means become aware of the seer. Realize the value of your eyes in a changing world to even be able to see it. Some people say, what's my purpose in life? I'm saying your purpose is every moment you being in this opportunity to see something that no one in the past could. And creativity is, in some sense, a response like a savior to the past, yet a giver of a gift to the future. It is sometimes, how would I say it? Shakespeare has this quote. He says, some people are born great, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. As if the dude in Elysium was just some random dude, and then suddenly he ended up in the most crucial point in the narrative. So for me, it's like they say work hard, but work hard towards where? And they say towards this idea of life, towards this kind of lifestyle. And then you're like, where is that lifestyle? And then you discover the texture of your mind. You realize you're not just an object, you're not just atoms somehow thinking. You are beyond the sensory, for you observe, you use them. As if the dude using the car is not the car, but in that moment is in the car. Like we to be in the world and not of it is kind of like that's a quote from Christ, I believe. To be in the world but not of it. In some sense, the wisdom in that quote is like somebody who's in a car and thinks he's the car, but comes to realize no, he is in the car. The objective reality is being administered by the same intelligence that moves the subjectivity upon it, through it, and within it. Language is a sort of ceremonial evocation of your own intelligence as an energetic expression. There have been many poets. Some poets have said when your emotions heighten, you just like how a cup gets filled to the brim, suddenly thereafter, if your emotions heighten even more, there comes a surplus. That means your creativity is not that you thinking new ideas, it is the world changing in new ways. In your mind, the world changes faster than how objective reality changes. So I think inevitably a nameless love would be a sort of acceptance of your kind of true presence. And that will change the world because by the nature of accepting beyond the illusion or beyond the past, you're in some sense the future already here. As if who I am right now is a memory for my future self. Do you see its value is not manifest yet? In some way the idea is there. So think of it this way. You're walking one day on the street and somebody comes and gives you a gift, some random person. You open it, it's a great gift. And suddenly somebody else, you're walking a little further and comes and gives you a gift. And you're constantly getting these different gifts. You see? So in regards to ideas and creativity, it is a sort of openness to receive. Openness to abide by certain intuitive rhythms, certain ways that certain speed, certain different like different speeds that thought moves in your attention. Study thought first in relation to objectivity, then when you wonder about thoughts, creating thoughts, you're pretty much wondering how the idea of you is creating every other idea. And then you begin to see the idea of you and every other idea is actually found in one moment. So your energy has opened its eyes into the world as an individual. You are an energetic individuality. Like some professor said, you're like a packet of energy. For me, an idol, like an image of inspiration, a very profound image of inspiration that came to me early on in my childhood was when I saw a candle in a dark room. And then I kind of saw a metaphor for my existence. I saw a sort of temporary, I saw the hourglass of time. And then at the same time, I recognized as if a certain intelligence is standing here. This intelligence is standing here once. What does it want to abide by? Does it want to abide by a structure pre-designed? Do you want to live in a world where the solutions are already there? Or do you want to live at the edge of the problem? Do you fear suffering? Or do you see it as the moment where the armies of the known and the unknown collide? For me, I find the purpose of our species is to find the greatest ideas it can and then have a momentum towards them, as if the commanders of the known universe commanded the world to declare war against the unknown and to choose to, with our weapons, with our identifications and symbology, create our own world out of it. Just like how Michelangelo, from like a chunk of rock, sculpted an angel, we are from the unknown sculpting the stories of our knowledge and civilization. I went to India. And I went to a place called the Divine Life Society. I went as a tourist for like one day. And when I went in there, they had a meditation hall, and I went in that meditation hall and I closed my eyes and I stopped being my story of life. I became a moment unspeakable. I became an untouchable moment of awareness. When I went into that state of realizing I'm untouchable because subjectively there is no self, as if think of it this way: what you think is your thoughts, or what you think is thinking. It is a sort of effort of movement. And when this effort of movement stops within you, you suddenly become aware of all the ways other efforts of movement are, in some sense, flowing. So, in some sense, when you stop the activity of one sensory perception, like when you close your eyes, your ears suddenly get the steering wheel of shaping reality for you. And it's similar with other senses. And so your relationship with your senses, the mind, is so complex that in some sense it can animate itself thinking that it's one being with five senses, or it's five selves in one being. As if, right, like think of it this way: the world is here for us to apply ourselves to it, to in some sense see the design's integration regardless of their chaotic or ordered story. Beyond the clouds of thought, the sun is already preaching its own truth. So, I, to be honest, what I feel I can only contribute in this moment to this concept, because the titles for these talks, they just kind of like, they just arise. And I'm going to say that sometimes when you entertain a spiritual reality, if you think the world is spiritual right now, you're going to, in some sense, be a bit gullible. And you're going to take subjective phenomena with a seriousness that can limit your attention and your senses engagement with objective reality. That means a thought can become a world for you, and that world could become a comfort zone, and that comfort zone could be a sort of blindfold as life passes you by. For me, the question is, before I can know who I am, also I have to know what world I'm in. And when I look at the world, I kind of see many worlds colliding, many stories. It's as if it's the survival of the greatest story that's going to run things. The Sufi poet Rumi says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grass, the world is too full to talk about. As if you reach an ultimate point of existence where words are no longer needed to justify the validity of the experience. Your life is your creativity. Your life is an energetic movement that is applying itself in accordance to a genetic design, but also what the genetic design has been able to create as an effect. One can say thoughts are the effect of the body being the cause of them. If you want to go too mystical, you want to give the unknown the steering wheel, it becomes as if thoughts are creating bodies, as if without consciousness there is no matter, or without matter there is no consciousness. In ancient Vedanta, they acknowledge this idea, and they acknowledge it in a sort of resolution where they kind of said that they arise together. So as if your mind and body enter the ballroom together, you know? So what I mean is that if you make divinity anything other than matter, you will only be left with consciousness. If you make your divinity your consciousness, you will only be left with matter. And then the wheel of karma continues. The wheel of karma not being per se a Buddhist idea, but just being a loop of manifestation. Rumi also has this quote where he says, I died as a mineral. Actually, let me change the songs too. um, Maulana Rumi says, I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and arose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on. All except God doth perish. Now the beautiful thing about language, ladies and gentlemen, is that you can replace the words and then totally see a new view out of the same structure. So in some sense, what I feel this guy is saying, he's saying there was an evolution of matter or the design of the world in consciousness. And so as if there was first a mineral and then came a plant, and then there was a plant that evolved into an animal, and then an animal evolved into man. And then he says, why should I even fear death as a man? You know, I shall die as a man and then become an angel to fly with angels, you know, to reach that state. But even from angelhood, even from being in the ray of the one truth, you know, he's like, I will pass on. All except God doth perish. And guess what God is? God is consciousness that is watching evolving matter. And so when you realize any story, whether religious, scientific, philosophy, is being embraced by, in some sense, your consciousness, which is the attributeless observer of the attributed observed, and objects of observance and subjects of observance. So in some sense, pretty much, mysticism is saying God is consciousness. You know, I mean, I don't know what else I can say after that sentence, you know. You know, when I first looked up wisdom quotes online, like literally just searched, Googled wisdom quotes. And when I looked at those quotes, you know, I immediately first was like, wow, what depth. And then suddenly was disappointed. Because I realized wisdom means you cannot avoid the chaos. It means if life presents itself as an inevitability, if there's an apocalypse, you'll be like, okay, that's how the world's moving. You know, I guess we go with the program at that point. But I'm saying at the same time, your consciousness, think of it this way. Imagine the most enlightened guru, super guru in reality, like whatever, like the most ultimate version of Eckhart Tolle was like right beside you, you know? And he was seeing you. He would see your objective. He would see how your body reacts to your subjective reality. He sees like how a person moves throughout the day. Sorry, it's not just the eyes that are the window to the soul. The whole moment of that being's existence is a window to their soul. And so when you suddenly see someone, you see how their physicality is inspired by their subjectivity, how their objectivity is inspired by their subjective view. And at the same time, the greatest teacher cannot give you the greatest thing that you can only give yourself, because your subjective, your personal life, the things that only you can see and no one else can see, that is your unique, your own personal and genetical and unique tool. It's like something you're given. The design of your existence is like something is a hint to the beyond. Some have said that this life is a reality making machine. And as a reality making machine, it brings up the question, what reality is the machine that makes reality in? And if we think we are the machine, how far can we even know about it? Sometimes when you change your position, you change your destiny because you change the outcome of the movement. For me, I have been using stories as a sort of, like, how can I say it? My consciousness, after finding itself in the body, is like wanted to find itself in thoughts. Wanted to, in some sense, wear subjective clothing. Like, that's what the ideal view is. Like, there's something I say where I say, not everybody has an iPhone, but everybody has an iThought. And an iThought is that primary ideal view that is, like, if you follow your desires, you come to that. There's a story of Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is, I don't know, I think he was the fifth patriarch of Buddhism. He was the guy who I believe took Buddhism to Japan. Anyways, the story of Bodhidharma is he goes to, let's say, Japan. I think it's Japan, yeah. Bodhidharma goes to Japan and he finds himself in the hall of an emperor. And the emperor is looking at Bodhidharma and saying, Bodhidharma, I have made many statues of Buddha. I have spread many Buddha's sutras and teachings all over. I've built many monasteries. Tell me, what is the merit? What do I get from it? The king is still trying to be a conqueror. And so Bodhidharma looks at him and says something no man has ever done. And because it's Bodhidharma, this guy, and then the king's right-hand man, like, beside him, And so Bodhidharma says something where the eyebrows of the guy beside the emperor lift, because he says something like, the emperor's never been talked to this way. And Bodhidharma looks at this emperor and says, all you have done is foolishness. And he leaves. And so the emperor is baffled, and then the emperor looks at his right-hand man and says, what did he mean? What is this? And then the emperor suddenly explains to him that it's not that what he did was foolish by spreading Buddhism. The way he asked, the way he still wanted to see a value, like a reward to the action, was a sort of ignorance of attitude and selfhood, And so, in some sense, like, that was the moral of that point. But what Bodhidharma does is he storms out of that palace. He storms out of that palace, and evidently, like, this is historical, he goes and meditates, like, it's strange, like, he's meditating his face is faced towards the wall of the palace, and he's just meditating there. And as he goes into this samadhi, he doesn't move for, like, a long time. And then here comes the main story I want to say. Some guy suddenly in this, like, night, finds Bodhidharma. And he comes to Bodhidharma and sees Bodhidharma is meditating, and he very peacefully just sits there. And he waits for Bodhidharma to finish his meditation, but days go by and the meditation is not finished. Bodhidharma is a samadhi. And as the guy's waiting there, the guy has some sort of problem where he wants this guru to solve for him, And so what happens is that suddenly the guy sees that this Bodhidharma stands up. He stands up from his meditation, as if he becomes active in observable consciousness. And so, like, when he does that in that moment, the guy suddenly runs to Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, please, you gotta help me. But Bodhidharma is walking in a way as if, like, all matter is just matter to him. Like, matter doesn't matter to him, And so, and so what happens is the guy does something extreme in this story. And he cuts his hand and he holds it and he shows Bodhiyama and he's like, Bodhiyama, I am loyal to you. Like that was a sign of loyalty evident to you back in the day, you know? And he says, Bodhiyama, I'm loyal to you and you have to help me, you know, I can't sleep at night. My mind is restless. Like that's the worst thing when okay, I'm not gonna get into that, but like he was saying my mind is restless, help me, Bodhiyama, you know? And what happens is that Bodhiyama begins to acknowledge the guy and he says, okay. And the guy says, pacify my mind, Bodhiyama, this restless mind. And Bodhiyama begins to ask this guy a question that changes him for his life. And Bodhiyama says, okay, you want me to pacify your mind? Bring your mind here in front of me and I will pacify it. And suddenly a wave of shock hits this guy. Because he suddenly realizes he can't find his mind. The mind is not an object. And he looks at Bodhiyama and he says, I can't find it. And Bodhiyama stares at him and smiles with a hidden grace and he says, there, your mind is pacified. And it's said that that guy attains a sort of nirvana in that moment. As if suddenly he sees a viewpoint, he begins existing in a world that he felt he could never be in, or he didn't even know about. That's the beauty of the future, it will always surprise us. And so that guy suddenly realizes the story of his problems is as temporary as every moment. An entrance into the nameless allowed a sort of selfish effort to become a collective universal effort. You start living as a universal being. The names and the stories matter as much as they help the civilization. If they don't help the graceful advancement of civilization, then there's a sort of inevitable destruction, as if we'll try to live peacefully, but we'll feel like we deserve not to. And so we have to update the story of our world. And it doesn't mean we gotta get rid of the previous stories, but we gotta say a new story. This is this ultimate solution to everyone's problems. You gotta start telling yourself a new story, and you gotta understand that you are never the character in the story. You are phenomena in a moment. You are the eyes of conscious existence witnessing a great happening. And regardless of how you identify with it or not, what the unknown does is that it opens up your knowledge. So let me tell you what that means. That means when you wonder about how you know, you see what you know. And when you see what you know, you see how you know it is because you are seeing it. You discover the presence, the purity of your presence. You realize who you are never could be storified. You are free before you could not be. And then your soul begins to live. And when I say your soul begins to live, is that you understand the flexibility of the subjective realm. And you understand the certain movements in pre-designed, as if like part of this moment of existence is there's design in it, you know? Like I can't like we're all on a planet right now. And that planet was here before I was, before my consciousness was manifest. For me, all societies will reach a breaking point, and at that breaking point, there will come a decision from individual activity to either acknowledge its inseparability with the cosmic activity or to maintain separate. If it maintains separate, you will reach an apocalypse. You will reach a dead end. And when you reach a dead end, you are in some sense, your free will has become the will of how the universe, this universal sector, expressed itself. For me, I'll tell you something unique. Diogenes, this Greek philosopher, was once asked, "Where are you a citizen of?" Somebody asked him, "Where are you from?" And he said, he looked at the guy and he knew he wanted to get into some sort of like some story or whatever. And so Diogenes looks at the guy and shouts and he says, "I am a citizen of the cosmopolites." And so that guy is stunned because he for his whole life he had never wondered if he was part of something bigger. The value of a lifetime is the value of the explorer. Every life has an explorer within. This explorer within, ancient times they called it logos. New Age community calls it your intuition. But like, I'm telling you, just don't be so convinced by your own stories, and then from the gaze of just momentary, spontaneous existential mastery, witness design. And there's no one way of looking at things. For me, when I look at all these talks like I give on YouTube, for me, I'm like, wow, look at all these snapshots of moments of my living. So think of it this way. Once you have advanced yourself to the maximum, you seek to advance your world to the maximum. Once the self and the world have been advanced to the maximum, then there is a maximum effort just moving like a light beam penetrating the darkness of the universe. Our knowledge will put our foot on completely on the gas. We will, rather than trying to slow down evolution, we accept it and we speed it up. And by speeding it up, we reach points of sophistication that will evoke new worlds of utility. That means like a researcher can share something that can change the world. Shams Tabrizi says, instead of resisting to changes, surrender. Let life be with you, not against you. If you think my life will be upside down, don't worry. How do you know down is not better than upside? That means in an instant release your hatred and resistance and anger that you feel you have towards this world. Release it. Just let go of those ideas as if they never existed. And then walk in the world. Walk in the world with not having to be something like a certain idea. Just be an open moment that is the sculptor of its eyes. Then art is everywhere, and then there's a surplus of creativity. There never like a lack of it. Our eyes are open in ways that we can see and also in ways that we cannot see. And as Rabindranath Tagore says, you cannot cross the sea by merely staring at it. I find that love is an allowance fundamentally. And it's an allowance for a higher efficient harmony to be expressed. And it includes the unknown, and it includes the transformation of knowledge through unknown moments and your engagement with them. because you cannot avoid the unknown. You cannot avoid, if you choose to have the idea of fear, you will be afraid every moment. But if you see a world without fear, you see a world of just endless effort. That means it doesn't matter what you do or where you are. You're just this endless source of effort because the concepts of your limitations don't exist for you. And so there's ways you can speak where are known, they are known, and there are flows of speech you can enter where there are unknown dances. It's as if in those moments for me, it's not like I'm talking. It's like the moment is just being, like the whole moment is being in a unique way. And so I think the profound thing of the attitude of love, like this whole love that the species seems to be missing out on, it's a tolerance for the greatest ideas to have a shot at a possible better view. That means the whole attempt of our civilization is first to keep hope alive, and then after that will be to, in some sense, uh, meet the edge of endless effort. Honestly, I really hope anybody who's listening to these talks, I hope that you start writing. Like something I tell people is that I go buy like a stack of printer paper, put a pen on it, put this on a table, you like move past like throughout the day a couple times. And then you'll see when an idea is important enough, that's when your book is there. You will know only when you're a writer, when you have something to say, something that has not been said before, because then your writing has power. It has the power of the unknown being revealed by you first. And every person's mind is a unique vision. So, thanks for listening, guys. If there's any comments, I'm looking at the chat window. And I guess I gotta kind of come to some sort of ending for the concept of nameless love that changed the world. An endless true effort that became the new. That's another way of saying the title. So guys, this is the reason I do these live streams is so that people can engage with the ideas, and you don't have to all agree or disagree. Like you can. I want to see like what do you guys think of the stuff I say? How do you guys receive it? It says 3 people watching, so I don't know. Don't be shy, guys. Just how do you see existence uh, and its relationship with our civilization? Or like how do you think the world's looking at itself? Every moment happens once, and you choose your response. Give yourself an allowance for great vision. You have only one lifetime. You can do that. Your greatness is an inner allowance rather than an outer consequence. You have to see yourself free before you can free the world. You have to see yourself able before you can see ability in others. It's just how it goes because we start with ourselves and then we move into the world. And there's so many angles to look at matter, which in some sense says there's like infinite ways to see an idea or to see something. As if an object nature is all the different ways you can see it. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste. Find the mirror of existence in the moment.